Hi, this is video 2 for passive voice. If you remember in the first video, we talked about the general idea behind passive voice and how to form it. With this video, we're going to focus more on why we use it and why we can sometimes use it and sometimes cannot use it. Okay, here we go. So first, how and why do we use passive voice? So here's our Mr. S again, the subject of the sentence, right? First, remember that the subject of every clause is extremely important. If the sentence is active, it has a subject. If the sentence is passive, it also has a subject. When you change a sentence from active to passive, you change the subject. Therefore, you change the focus of the sentence. What do you want to focus on? Which idea? Readers focus on subjects when they read your sentence. So look at these examples with the different subjects in red. The professor found 30 verb errors in my essay. I found 30 verb errors in my essay. The ESL tutor found 30 verb errors in my essay. Okay, so we have 3 different subjects. The rest of the sentence is the same. If you change it to passive voice, subject, verb, object, you're going to use the object 30 verb errors, and that's going to be the subject of your passive sentence. 30 verb errors were found in my essay. So this first example has no agent. In other words, we do not include the person who did the action. Or you could write the sentence the same way. 30 verb errors were found in my essay by the professor, by me, or by the ESL tutor. So you could include those if you want, but with passive voice, I think the focus of information is on the errors. Here's some reasons why we use passive voice. So you might be wondering, if the active sentence is correct, why do I have to change it? Why can't I just have one correct answer in English? Well, sometimes it's nice to have more than 2 ways to write something correctly, and it depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what you want to focus on. So first, instead of focusing on the doing of the action, we want to focus on the receiving of the action. Second, in addition, we may not want to include the doer of the action in the sentence. The doer is called the agent. Here are some reasons why the agent is often not included in a passive sentence. First, we don't know who did the action. For example, their car has been stolen. Most of the time, you don't know who did it, right? But the focus is on the car and the fact that the car is gone. Second, we don't need to mention who did the action. Why? Well, maybe it's obvious from the context. Maybe it refers to people in general. Maybe it's not important. So here's an example. The elevator has been fixed. So it's obvious that the person who did that is somebody who's capable of fixing elevators, right? Somebody who has that training and that job. And most of the time, you don't really need to mention it unless it would be something unusual. Third, we don't want to say who did the action. We want to avoid indicating responsibility or blame. Listen to politicians when they talk. You'll probably hear lots of passive voice. For example, mistakes have been made. Oh, well, who made the mistakes? Maybe they don't want to say. Maybe they don't want to admit that they made the mistake, or maybe they don't want to accuse someone else. Now, be careful because some verbs can never be passive. You need to learn 2 more grammar terms to describe verbs. The first one is transitive. Only transitive verbs can be used in passive voice. Transitive verb must be followed by an object. Subject plus verb plus object. Here are some examples of transitive verbs: eat, finish, study, learn, fix, meet. With all of these verbs, you need to have a subject, of course, and very often you have an object that comes after the verb. I ate what? You finished what? They learned what? She kissed whom? I wanted to put at least one example with a person. Remember, an object often answers the question what or whom. Who or whom. So here's some sentences. I ate the avocado. The avocado was eaten by me, if you want to include that. This sentence could be written with active voice or passive voice because the verb eat is transitive. You finished the project. The project was finished. Whoops. Okay, I could say by them, or maybe I should fix this and say by you, right? I didn't make them match. Sorry. They learned the vocabulary words. Now you tell me, how would the passive voice sentence be written? I hope you said the vocabulary words were learned by them. And you don't have to say by them if you don't want to. She kissed her cousin. What's the passive form? Her cousin was kissed by her, right? So if you want to include the agent, and if you're using a pronoun, sometimes the pronoun form changes. So she is a subject pronoun. Over here, that would change to her, by her. Okay, so these are transitive verbs. These can be passive. Okay, so this slide shows you, again, transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. And one more type, linking verbs. Okay, so let's look at the difference. As we said before, transitive verbs come with an object after. They can be used with passive voice. The city finally repaired the potholes. Passive. The potholes were finally repaired by the city. Or maybe we don't need to mention that. An intransitive verb does not take an object after. So subject plus verb. You could have a sentence with just 2 words, just a subject and a verb. There might be other words too, but it's not an object. Passive voice is not possible. Here's some examples. The rain ended around midnight. This is not an object here. This is a prepositional phrase. So there's no object that comes after ended. This sentence cannot be passive. So these examples on the right are not possible. We left in the morning. He died last year. Only active voice is possible, not passive. And then there's one more type of verb called a linking verb. This is when you would see the sentence pattern subject plus verb plus complement. Complement is kind of a confusing concept for a lot of people. Complement might be a noun phrase, it might be an adjective, it might be an adverb. These also will not be written in passive voice. Here are some examples. He was sick a lot last year. She became a doctor about 10 years ago. We stayed away from the scene of the accident. So I have an example where the complement is an adjective, a noun, and an adverb. And this arrow is meant to show you that complements refer back to the subject. So the adjective sick describes this same man. The noun doctor is referring to this same woman. It's the same person. And this adverb away gives the place of this subject, we. So complements refer back to the subject. They don't answer the question what or who like an object does. Notice the verbs. These are called linking verbs. The most common one we use all the time is the be verb. So a link is like a chain, right? This verb links or connects the subject with the complement that comes after. So these are some tricky issues to keep in mind with verbs. Not all verbs can be used in passive voice, so be careful. See you next time.